What's going on, everyone? We're going to try something a little bit fun today. I am here with Chef Chris Hill. He's a good friend of mine, and he's been on the podcast before. And we're going to actually do a little thing we like to call cooking and conversation. So I am the conversation guy. That's what my podcast is called and what I do. So I love conversations. But as you know, I used to be a chef. Chris is a chef. And we just believe that food facilitates conversation so well. So we are here today. Chris is going to cook a dish. We're going to have some conversation. It's going to be laid back. It's going to be fun. And I'm looking forward to it. Chris is a chef. He's an entrepreneur. He's a speaker. He's a leadership expert. So, Chris, it's great to have you on today.
Mario, you too, man. Hopefully, give you some tips as we're kind of going through this. I got the grill cranked up. I got a bunch of ingredients here. It should be fun, man.
Nice. What are we making today, by the way?
I got some nice, beautiful tuna medallions. I was going to use some of the ingredients I have from the garden back here. So I got some fresh romaine that I actually already kind of cut. Fresh romaine. I made a basil vinaigrette here with some basil from the backyard, some arugula from the backyard. So nice kind of bright spring flavors. Do a little marinade actually on the tuna with the basil vinaigrette, and then serve that over the salad, the greens, and the little bit of lemon juice. Should be pretty nice.
That's awesome. Where did your inspiration come from for this dish?
Really, I think just being cooped up here in the house the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I guess it's been. Be able to kind of nurture the garden in the backyard and be able to use stuff that's all kind of right here. I think it's a lot of fun. Even the tuna is kind of fresh off the coast of either North Carolina or Virginia, so close by. So really being kind of connected to what's close by.
Is tuna one of your go-to when it comes to seafood?
Yeah, I love. So if I'm going, I wish I could say there's a go-to because I love tuna. I love a good kind of Pacific salmon. I even love a good kind of nice clean whitefish, like a mahi or something like that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I like tuna a lot. I'm not a huge fan of canned tuna. I'll be honest. I mean,
Oh
I'll
yeah,
do
I
some
agree.
things with it, but it's just like it gets tiring after a while. I think fresh tuna like that, that's nice and red. I mean, it's awesome. It's one of my favorites. I'm a big salmon fan too. I
Oh,
like
definitely.
I like Copper River salmon, to be
Dude,
honest. Like,
my first job at Atlanta Fish Market in Atlanta, we sold like the Atlantic salmon for $9, $10 a pound, whatever it was. This is a while ago, but and then we sold Pacific salmon. We sold salmon trout, and then we also sold basically this time of year. Like I think it was basically the month of May or June, the Copper River salmon, which was at the time like $25 a pound. Now you go to Whole Foods and it's $35 a pound. You have all these amazing nutrients that are there because the Copper River, they basically all these salmon go up the river and they catch them right there after they've gotten all these amazing nutrients. So like the color, you've seen it, it's like that bright, almost like red salmon color versus all the farm raised salmon. It's okay, but it's definitely that kind of light orange versus like the very nutrient rich stuff that like the Copper River.
and you have to eat it medium rare. I
Oh, for
mean,
sure.
you overcook it, it's dead. I mean, that's one of the things I love to take, and I don't like to season it too much because it's already so delicious. You just,
Mm-hmm.
like, get it with some salt and pepper very simply, throw it on the grill really hot on both sides just for, like, a minute or 2, and
Yeah.
nice and medium rare, that's, like it's awesome.
One of the things I like to do with salmon, even or just fish in general, is especially any fish with the skin is get a nice sear on the one side, and then finish off in the oven, skin side up, so it stays crispy, and then just kind of like lightly kind of finish it. So yeah,
Do you
I
eat
did.
your fish skin?
Um, yeah, a lot of it just is kind of that kind of acrid tar taste. Um, if I'll at least try it, and if it's good and crispy, then definitely.
I really
If
like it. Yeah, when it's crispy, you're right.
if not, then for sure not. One thing I like to do too is get nice and crispy and do like almost like a tartare with it. So instead of using like a cracker or a piece of bread as like the medium to scoop it, I'll use like the fish skin to kind of scoop the actual fish itself. Get a little meta there, but yeah.
That's it. Hey, Zach saying hello on the
Zach,
stream.
what's up, man? How are
Yeah.
you, buddy?
good friend of ours, Zach. He's I'm surprised he's not trying to get on with us here. I know him. He always has something fun to say.
I'm probably offending him having some fish. He's been on this huge no meat. Did you ever
I,
watch the Game Changers diet? The Game Changers documentary?
I haven't watched the documentary, but I heard of it, and I know that when I talked to him, he was on that no meat thing, and he says right now we have to have a cook off.
Gladly.
I think it would be fun. But so tell us really quickly. Let me get this banner out of the way on the screen. There we go, so we can see what you're doing. So you took some of that marinade and you put it on your fish. How long do you let that marinade sit on that tuna before you are
Well,
ready to cook it?
well, typically, so a marinade is usually going to have a vinaigrette. This is a basil vinaigrette. It's going to have some sort of acid to it, right? A vinegar, a lemon juice, which I have here in this vinaigrette. So after a little while, it's going to start to cook it. And we want to make sure to keep that nice kind of bright pink flavor for the tuna. So typically I would do maybe 30 minutes or so. I actually might throw it on the grill here in just a few minutes. I can kind of baste it as well because it's going to serve as a marinade, but also like as a base. You want me to go ahead and throw it on, or?
Yeah, well, before you do that, how did you make the marinade again? Just run us through it, because when I look at it, it's nice and bright, vibrant green, and that's what you
It
want it
is.
to look like. And I know if you overblend something like that, it can lose that chlorophyll. Or if you let it sit too long, the same thing will happen, especially if there's basil in it. Basil's very prone to turning black. So what
Yeah.
we used to do in the restaurant is just add spinach, because spinach will stay bright green and it's very neutral flavored.
Oh, I
So
like
if you
that.
mix the spinach and the basil, it'll still taste like basil, but it'll stay green. But that is beautifully bright green. What did you do to make that?
Well, I did do a little bit of the same kind of cheat with a little bit of arugula, which you see over here. But yeah, so I first of all I blanched it in a little bit of water,
Mm,
hot water, and then cooled it off really nice. So it made it really easy to puree, but then it kept that kind of bright green flavor color. Mixed that with a little bit of roasted garlic, some olive oil, and a little bit of lemon juice, and here we are. So yeah, it's really beautiful, and it's also a testament, I think, to my wife and what we've got going on here in the garden outside.
I was
And
saying, you
then just add a
could
little bit of
probably
salt.
do all kinds of stuff with that, huh? You could probably that could become like a dressing, a
Oh,
sauce.
it's gonna be the dressing for the salad that I got here. So actually, I got this arugula here. I got a little bit of romaine here that I took off that plant that you saw earlier. I'm just gonna
Mhm.
kind of tear that a little bit, and that's gonna be the base of this salad. I'll put a little bit of dressing in there, a little bit of salt and pepper in there too, and that's gonna be the base for it. A little bit of Parmesan cheese as well.
Nice. I love that baby romaine. It's so tender, but it still has
Oh
some
yeah,
crunch to it. It's perfect.
yeah, nice and light, and like you said with the salmon, letting the kind of those bright, delicious flavors kind of shine through.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. When you have really fresh ingredients like you have there that are just fresh out of the garden, you don't need, and it's kind of the testament why I love Italian cooking so much.
Oh,
Because the whole
absolutely, yeah,
philosophy is like, if the ingredients are bright and vibrant and fresh, you don't have to do a lot to them to make them delicious.
for sure, for sure. And I assume you've been drinking the Kool-Aid for a while too, right? Growing up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What's your favorite thing to make? You talked a little bit about the kind of rustic Italian
Mhm.
dishes, sauces, and things, but
Yeah.
yeah, for you.
My favorite thing to make really is going back to that old school Italian, right? It's the homemade pasta, like that you actually make, along with the sauce that simmers all day long with various meats in it and bones and different things. And then of course, you have to have fresh made homemade garlic bread. I mean, that's like my go-to comfort meal right there, is a big bowl of homemade pasta with homemade sauce and all the different meats that are braised in that sauce, and then a big crusty, crunchy piece of garlic bread. I'm happy as can be with that meal right there.
Did you grow up with the not just like homemade, but actually like the bread itself is homemade?
I did. My grandmother used to see, I had a cool mix because I used to cook with my grandparents, my dad's parents, and my grandmother used to bake and my grandfather used to cook. So my grandmother would bake and make the homemade pasta, and my grandfather would make the sauce and the proteins and all of those different than the vegetables and those things. So they would do it together, and I would be right with them doing
Oh,
that.
that's cool.
So that's kind of where I got that. And the other thing that happened there too is, my grandfather retired the year that I was born. So when my dad would travel a lot for work, I'd stay with them, and that's what we would do. We would cook because cooking became his hobby after he retired. But the other thing we would do is his house got Food Network. My house didn't.
Nice.
So when I was
Yeah.
there, we would watch the old school shows like Emerald Live, Malta
Yeah.
Mario, Boy Meets Girl, Bobby Flay. Those were the good shows. Like, I don't like to knock them, but Food Network today just isn't the same. It's like, I guess the kids that grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, the way they look at MTV, that's how I look at Food Network. It's like,
Oh, for
I
sure.
miss those old school shows where you actually had a chef behind the stove cooking and teaching people how to do that.
Yeah, that's for me too. That's really kind of where I fell in love with food at a young age, but I fell in love with cooking. I think early '90s, really, when the Food Network was actually, like you said, teaching people. Definitely. So I got my grill nice and hot here.
Okay, here, let's take a look at the grill.
Yeah. So yeah, you can see there. I have my grill, just a typical kind of 4-burner grill. What I have on here also is my baking steel. I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a second too. But I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil here on the baking steel, and you can go either on the grill side or on the baking steel side. I'm gonna go ahead and use my.
I love that sizzle.
Nice, yeah.
And so does my puppy. You hear him in the background. As soon as you drop that, he's all over it.
So that baking steel, that piece it's about 18 by 24, maybe something like that, and it weighs probably about 30 pounds. And so if you put it on the grill and let it heat up, it's going to hold that heat really, really well. I'm just going to let that kind of hang out for a little bit.
So talk to me about closing the lid, because, a lot of times people will leave the lid open when they cook things, especially when they get that sear on things. Sometimes you close it. What's your philosophy on when you're grilling on the lid placement?
Well, so I like to keep it closed. That way it maintains the temperature, especially for like the baking steel where it's cooking right now. Fortunately, I can kind of see. You can almost actually even see through here. I can see the temperature kind of coming up through. But definitely to keep the heat locked in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it has to do with the temperature. That's absolutely. And I think that you have to take into consideration when you open the grill, you're going to lose some heat. And then when you put that food on the grill, you're going to lose some heat because it's going to absorb some. So you have to keep your eye on the temperature, but you have to also keep in mind that when you close the lid, that's going to centralize the heat. So if you're just looking to get a nice crust and a char, but not cook it all the way, if it's something really, like I said, like a really sensitive food that you don't want to take too far, then you have to really pay attention to how the lid placement. So that's why I just wanted to bring that up, because I know that you know what you're doing and you're very experienced. I just wanted to explain that for the people watching or listening.
Yeah,
That
and I just turned the grill off too. Those medallions were probably about an inch and a half thick. It's only going to take a few minutes aside with the full heat. But by turning it off, letting some of the heat out, I'm letting them kind of slowly finish cooking. I can leave them on here for pretty much the duration of us chatting, and they won't overcook too much.
How do you like your tuna cooked?
Like a medium rare.
Yeah.
I guess it depends kind of on what it is too. Like definitely I can eat it raw for like a sushi application or a carpaccio or a tartare. But I do like, if I'm having a steak of anything, I want at least like a little bit warm on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, those look delicious. I'll pull them off here in a few minutes. We can kind of check them out. But
Cool.
super easy, super delicious. Like I said, really the inspiration for me has been hanging out in the backyard, doing a lot of garden work.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. With your fish, when you season it, what's your philosophy? Because I know a lot of people, they talk about, if you season it too early, the salt will pull some of the moisture out, but you don't want to see if you sear it and then season it, the seasoning's not going to stick. How do you time your seasoning for your fish?
Uh, so for fish, I like to season fish right before I'm gonna cook it. Again, if you have salt or any sort of vinaigrette that's gonna have some vinegar. If you put it too long, give it too much time beforehand, it's going to kind of start to cure it or cook it. You think of like curing fish would be. Let's see how it's looking.
That looks great.
Stay open here. But
You
yeah,
can see the ring on the inside, like when you look at the
Really?
side there. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's this idea of like curing, right? So if you give it too long, then it's going to start to cure it. So my philosophy has always been 30 minutes or so ahead of time. Go ahead and start seasoning if you want, but too far ahead of time will definitely, I think, for me, do too much.
I think another thing worth mentioning is, and and I can see how you're moving the fish around on the grill. Every grill has hot spots.
Oh,
So you have to,
for sure.
when you're using your grill, you need to take note of that so that you can move the food to where it's going to cook appropriately. Or, because if you put a piece, say you have the whole grill top covered and you have certain pieces on hot spots, certain pieces not, you probably want to rotate and move them around, move the ones from the hot spots to the not so hot spots, the one not so hot spots to the hot spots, so you get that even cooking throughout.
Yeah, it's almost like playing the game. And like I'm sure when you
It is.
worked at the club, when you were training people, there was a lot of hey, just so you know, this is where it's hot, this is where it's not
Mhm.
hot, and most grills will have like in the very back will usually be pretty hot.
Mhm.
Closer up, maybe not quite as much. But yeah, definitely knowing that. And when you're working in a service setting, in like a commercial setting, you're gonna have like your certain areas for where you're gonna have like your medium steaks, your medium well steaks, your medium rare steaks, all that kind of stuff.
Actually, when I first started working there, and this was before they remodeled the kitchen, we had the old school French style burners. So
Oh,
the whole
cool.
stovetop was like cast iron, and then you had
Nice.
the eyes with the little inserts. So there was no like turning the flame up or down. There was one really hot flame on the stovetop. It was where you placed the pot on the stove that determined what the heat was. And if you wanted it really scorching hot, you'd flip out the eye of the burner and there would be a flame that was like 3 feet in the air that you would put your pot over, and that thing would cook stuff fast.
Yeah, for sure. As you can probably hear, there's a little bit of a plane flying over me now too.
That's cool. I like it. I love being outside, and the ambiance it all adds to it. Where it's like, and I tell people this whole series that we're doing here, if they're listening to it on the podcast, it's like listening to a baseball game on the radio, right? You hear the
Yeah.
crack of the bat, the crowd in the background, you hear like the announcer, and then you hear the play-by-play guy telling you what to do, and you have to like imagine what's happening. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, that's kind of what this is. It's like, a play-by-play of a baseball game. But if you want to see it, you can go to Facebook or YouTube or Twitter and connect with me, and you can see this live stream because we're doing these live and then repurposing them and re-airing them on the podcast, so you can actually see what Chef Chris Hill is making, how he's doing it, and all of that fun stuff. So make sure that you're connected with us across all the different platforms so you get the full immersion experience of cooking and conversation.
I like that. Yeah, imagine trying to listen to a baseball game without hearing the crack of the bat. It wouldn't be a whole lot of fun.
No, it wouldn't be. And I there was a movie. What movie was it that I was watching recently? I think it was The Natural, where back in the because that was set like back in the 1920s or it was a long time ago. And what they would do is they would have someone at the game relaying to the booth the local radio station, because the satellite signal didn't travel that far back then. They would tell them what happened, and then they would have sound props in the studio. And so if someone got a double, they would crack a bat with like a stick that they had, and it would sound like the crack of the bat. And then they would say someone hit a double. So, I mean, even when they weren't there, they were trying to mimic the background sound and the experience because it's that important.
Sounds like some of that stuff the old Astros were doing like a few years back.
With the garbage cans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where they got the idea.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
I have mixed feelings. I mean, I think that.
Are you a baseball guy?
Oh, huge baseball guy. I love
Yeah.
baseball. It's my first love when it comes to sports.
So
I think
Pirates.
that Pirates, absolutely. Yep. Big Bucko fan. And it hurts a lot of times because, the
Yeah.
Pirates had some rough years. But I think for the whole Astros thing, I think a lot of teams were doing things that probably weren't above board in that regard.
For sure.
So them being singled out, was it bad? Yes. Was it wrong? Yes. But there's so many, like sign stealing is part of the game. It always has been. It always will be. It's the manner in which they did it. But here's the thing that doesn't quite make sense to me. So AJ Hinch, who's the manager of the Astros, and Alex Cora, who is the manager of the Red Sox, both were part of it. They get suspended for a year. Okay, makes sense. Well, Pete Rose gambled a little bit back in the day, and he's suspended for life. Like, to me, they're both wrong, but you got to make them more equal punishment-wise.
Well, and Pete Rose, like, all right, like maybe betting on the games shouldn't be allowed, but he also he wasn't betting against his team. He was betting that his team would win. So
Right.
like at least in one sense, like he's like the spirit of his gambling, which maybe the gambling shouldn't be allowed, but the spirit of it was at least in a sense that where he was it was in a positive competitive way.
Well, I don't want to make light of what he did because I don't think gambling should be allowed in sports just because you're too close to it. But my point is, I think he paid his dues. I think he did his time. I think they need
30 years or more, probably.
Probably 40 years at this point. He's the all-time hits leader. Let him into the Hall of Fame. That's all the guy wants. I mean, come on. It's a shame to see a Hall of Fame without Pete Rose in it when it comes to Major League Baseball. But
and like at a certain point, like he's like late 70s now, I think. Like it'd be nice for him to pass away whenever he does, in a way that it has a little bit of integrity and like you said, I think he's put his dues in.
I agree. Yep. So it's just unfortunate. I think that there has to be some thing there along the lines. But let me ask you this, since we're talking about baseball and since we don't have baseball right now, what's your favorite ballpark food?
Well, that's a good question. Probably some like good like pulled pork nachos, something like that.
Oh yeah, I like that. In Pittsburgh, they have sandwiches with pierogies on them that are really good.
Nice.
But it's hard to beat a stadium hot dog. And it's funny because I'm eating a hot dog, eating some nachos, drinking a cold beer, watching the game, and I'm thinking if I would have gotten this food anywhere else, I probably wouldn't be enjoying it. But since I'm at the game, it's like the best thing I could be eating right now. And so I'll never forget. I was at a game with my dad. We were at a spring training game in Arizona a few years ago. And it was like the first game of the season. So baseball is brand new, first spring training game. We're standing right behind home plate. We're each eating a hot dog, drinking a cold beer. It's nice and hot out, sun's shining. Baseball's back. One of the ushers comes up behind us and is like, he looks at us, he goes, cold beers and a nice stadium steak. Doesn't get any better than that. I was like, that's right. I never heard it called a stadium steak either, but I love it. So that's what I call it now.
And that's a hot dog.
It's a hot dog. It's a nice stadium steak.
I'm gonna have to start using that too, if you don't mind. That's great.
Please. It wasn't mine, so please take it. But how's our tuna looking?
It's looking really good, man.
I like that. It's got some nice color on the top. I see.
It does, yeah. You can see you got a nice sear on it, and hopefully it's at least I might like go a little bit too long, but hopefully it's at least like a nice kind of medium inside.
How long do you like to let that rest?
I'd probably go ahead and slice it up right now. You want me to grab a knife real quick?
Yeah, go for it, man. I'll fill some. Right. I can fill some airtime while you're.
All right, cool. Yeah, I work for our sponsors.
That's right. So we'll go over. Anyway, I just want to let everyone know that this is something we're going to be doing regularly. Please give us your feedback, whether it be ratings and reviews on the podcast on iTunes or here in the live stream, whether you're watching us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. We'd love to get your feedback. This is something I thought would be fun for us to do. I noticed that a lot of chefs during this whole lockdown thing have been, cooking at home. And it's been a lot of fun for me as someone who likes that style as we talked about on Food Network, to see them in their own kitchens, cooking simple dishes. I saw Thomas Keller yesterday, in fact, making different sauces from hollandaise. So how to properly make a hollandaise, different sauces, how to properly blanch asparagus and use those different sauces. And it's just so much fun to watch that kind of thing. So, I love conversations. I love food. So we wanted to bring you this kind of cooking and conversation style format. And it's going to be something that hits the podcast once a week starting in June, but we're going to be doing these quite often here on the live stream. So just keep up, give us your feedback. If there's any types of food you want to see, if there's anyone you can think of that would be great to come on and cook with us, we'd love to reach out to them. So this is something I just wanted to mention we're having a lot of fun with. Chef Chris Hill's the first person on, so this is the inaugural stream. So Chris, thank you for doing this. This is awesome.
Absolutely,
I'm having
man.
so much fun. And that tuna looks excellent, by the way.
Yeah, hopefully you can see it. It's got a nice kind of pink to it. So, if I'd probably let it go maybe a minute less or so, but it's still got a nice kind of medium rare to medium to it.
Yeah, and it was so quick. Like tuna cooks really quickly. It's one of those things that if you have a nice hot surface like you had, it literally took maybe 3 minutes altogether.
Right, and closing the lid, you're trapping that heat, so it's getting that ambient air heat as well. So you're getting a little bit of heat kind of from all over the place.
Yep, and then you always want to let any meat, any seafood, you always have to let it rest after it comes off the heat, because anytime it hits that heat, it constricts and all the juices go right to the center. If you cut it right then, you're going to lose all of that juice. In fact, if you do that with a steak and you throw it on and you cut it right away, it could be cooked a perfect medium rare, but when you cut it, that blood being in the center is all going to immediately come out and it's going to look like it's well done. So you want to always allow that piece of meat or fish or whatever to rest like Chef Chris did, so that those juices, it relaxes again and those juices evenly distribute throughout that beautiful piece of fish.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, there's another plane flying over. But yeah, so it kind of ruins the fact that you cooked a perfectly nice tender steak, because all the juices that make and keep it tender are no longer kind of there.
Yeah. So now that you have the fish is cooked, you have it sliced up, how would you say, and I saw you tossing the salad together earlier as we were chatting, how would you serve this?
I think just kind of rustic style, even maybe family style, like in a nice kind of platter, greens over the bottom. Like I said, so here we have the arugula, the romaine here, which I'm growing here in the backyard as well. I put a little salt and pepper, a little bit of the Parmesan cheese, a little bit of this basil vinaigrette with the roasted garlic and the basil Parmesan. I said, and then maybe finished off with some cucumbers.
Nice.
Unfortunately, cucumbers not ready in the garden yet now, but still get them kind of nice and fresh. So maybe kind of just slice this up. And if I was, it's kind of when you're in a commercial setting, you never really cut sitting down. It's a little bit challenging here.
I was gonna say that looks awkward. It would feel awkward for me too. I know you're always standing up in a nice posture. But we have another comment here I just wanted to mention really quickly, because we were just talking about baseball. Alex Presley just commented he wants prime rib, so we're gonna have to do that. Alex played for the Pirates, the Astros, the Tigers, the White Sox, the Brewers. So he played in the major leagues for quite some time. Had a really nice career too. So he's a good friend. He's actually family. So I'm glad to have him here and commenting. So we'll have to hit up the prime rib at some point as well. I know that's one of his favorites.
I mean, a good French dip at a ballpark sounds pretty good too.
Yeah, you can't beat that. I mean, that's some interesting food. Baltimore, Camden Yards.
Yeah, Camden Yards. Yeah.
Yeah, they have some interesting food. They have like crab mac and cheese, and they'll even put that on a hot dog. They have crab cakes because they're Maryland blue crab. Like soft shells are one of my favorite things.
Soft shells, soft shell crabs are probably in my top 5 of food to eat. It's funny over on TikTok, the one video I kind of had that went a little bit not viral, but got a little bit of traction was me cleaning and showing how to cook a soft shell crab.
Tell me about TikTok real quick, because I've been consuming a lot of TikTok. I haven't been actually posting content yet to TikTok, but I have some ideas. How are you using it? How have you seen it impact your brand?
So I'm not sure if it's impacted at all yet, but I've probably been I've been using it to create short form, up to a minute videos so I could have like just now taken me cooking this fish, how I marinate it, cooking it, making the salad, and then putting it all together. I'm just using that 1 minute to show a cooking recipe, a dish, whatever else might be. Because a lot of the content that I put over on Facebook, Instagram, is more, or even on YouTube, is more in the chef world, but more about like leadership and about leading your team and company culture. So it's kind of a way to remind people that, hey, I cook too.
Yeah. You have the same kind of conundrum I have, where we both love food. We come from the food world, but we kind of get pulled away from it a little bit to do these other things that we're also passionate about. But how do how do you marry the two? Because we want to play in both places, and that's why that's part of the reason why we're doing this series now, is because cooking and conversation. I love the experience of food and how it facilitates these kind of conversations, and I love to share that love and that passion. But we also get to talk about some other things. So it's kind of a dance that I think we both kind of play with. How do we keep our hands in both places?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I've found the right answer. I think I do like that. 'Cause, sometimes people say like, "Would you ever cook?" And like, obviously, certain like consulting projects, I'll go like help with menu design and coming up with new recipes and dishes that, I'm not often advertising a lot of that kind of stuff. But there's definitely more that I want to show. But I think at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of people sharing pictures and videos and like Chef Ryan Peters is he actually might be up near you, but I think he is in Pittsburgh. But he has a really great TikTok following. There's people doing really cool stuff on TikTok and on Facebook, Instagram that they're showing the food side of things. Well, I maybe 5-6 years ago made a conscious choice that, well, I can continue to just do video recipes and things like that, but do we need another tuna tartare recipe? Do we need another chicken salad recipe? Probably not. To me, it shows and reminds people that, hey, like, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's an interesting take. And it's like, I don't think that we'll ever and we always talked about this in the kitchen. You're probably not going to reinvent the wheel, right? You're probably not going to come up with something that's brand new. You can just put your spin on it, put your take on it,
Yeah,
improve one part of it, or whatnot. So I mean, yeah, and I haven't found the answer either, to be honest, into that regard. I just know that there's things that I love to do, and I try to incorporate as many of them as possible under one place. But you have to be creative, and that's what I think makes innovation so fun, right?
for sure. And then you even look at somebody like Dominique Ansel, who came up with the cronut. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
like the last half dozen years ago, probably. Like, that in itself wasn't even original either, because he used the idea of a donut and a croissant and merged the two, and now he has this thing called the cronut. So there's very few things, whether it's in cooking or in other ventures, that you're gonna be able to do that haven't been done in some capacity. The question is, how can you do it in a way that kind of sings to who you are and what you represent and what you want to represent?
Yeah, absolutely. And so how are you gonna try the tuna?
Yeah, I'll give it a little try, man.
It looks good. I wish you could pass some through the screen right here.
I waking your dog up.
Oh yeah, yeah, right up
Yeah, it's
on me.
really nice. It's really nice. It's got that nice. The basil vinaigrette just does a really good job of bringing through those kind of spring flavors.
What I like about that too is it's so quick, easy, and it's repurposing, because the same vinaigrette you made, you used to marinate the fish and to dress the salad.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not making like a multitude of different things.
Well, and that also kind of keeps the cohesiveness of the dish. You have the same flavors in the salad and the fish, and it's gonna kind of work through. Versus, sometimes there's too many different components going on to where people get a little bit, I guess, confused of what the chef's trying to do.
Now, if you were gonna pair a starch with that, what would you go with?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, what I would love to do actually is this might speak to you, is takes a little bit of orzo pasta,
Mm.
cook it, chill it, and then toss the orzo pasta in the salad. I do a similar kind of orzo pasta with a citrus kind of tuna, grill some zucchini, and make a big salad and toss it all together.
Yeah. Are
So I might do something like that.
I love orzo, and I think orzo is so underrated as a pasta. It's one of my favorites, especially like in the winter time when it's like creamy orzo with like a nice matignon in
Oh
there, and
yeah, yeah.
it's like it's so heavy, but it's so like filling and good.
When arborio rice gets all the love.
It does. Yeah, and I don't get me wrong, I like risotto, but you can only do so, you can have so much of it, and it's like all tends to be the same.
Yeah. Well, and for anyone that's interested in likes the orzo like you do, I definitely recommend using it for like a pasta salad, kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Keeping that
a
tonight.
yeah, and it's a perfect time of year for that as well. Are you on any kicks lately? Like, there's certain times where I'll get on these kicks where I'm using maybe the same ingredient or the same technique and just like refining it and doing it for a while, then I'll pivot to something else. Are you on any kicks recently, food
Yeah,
wise?
I wish I was. I am just doing a lot of playing around with stuff, given like the circumstances with being stuck at home and not being able to go out and do too much. I am loving like this baking steel on my grill. I've done a lot with that, getting it nice and hot. I've also had fun with I have like my smoking gun. So I don't know if you're familiar with the smoking gun, but I'll close the grill, and then you have little holes in the side.
Mhm.
I'll put the little hose through there and add a little bit of wood chips, kind of smoky flavoredness to whatever it is I'm cooking.
That's nice.
What
Yeah.
about you though?
Right now, I've been doing a lot of baking actually, believe it or not. And I'm not a huge fan of baking, but something about being at home and being on lockdown, like I've made bread a few times, which was really easy. Actually easier than I thought it was going to be and turned out really well. I mean, I haven't made bread since pastry class in college, so I wanted to go ahead and do that. I made pizza that was really good. Like let the dough proof overnight and
Nice.
really did like a 2-day type of thing, and it was really good. It was like nice and light and fluffy, but also crispy on the outside when it baked. So that was really good. So those are kind of what I've been playing with around this time. I mean, it's one of those things, like, I've been in the mood, though, for a nice roasted chicken, so I think that's what's next on my list.
I saw Thomas Keller had a nice roasted chicken video a couple days, maybe last week, one day, where I've roasted plenty of chickens, but something with the way he does it, I just like watching him
That's
do
kinda
do
like
it.
his thing. He's like the best. That's
Yeah,
like yeah, he's the best at just straight up roasted chicken, and it's something that I've been perfecting over time because it is like one of those ultimate comfort foods. When you talk comfort food, that's definitely in the top 10 for me, is a
and
nice.
it's easy, and it's like once you learn how to do it, like we talked about on the podcast, I think, where like if you can learn how to do certain techniques, then you can apply those to whatever else.
Right, right. Yep. And that's the key. If you know the techniques, you can make any recipe. You can really, it actually gives you the freedom to start trying other things. Because if you can properly saute and braise and roast and grill and all of those things, there's only so many base techniques. And if you
Mhm.
have those down, then you can mix and match different ingredients, playing with different techniques, experimenting with different things. And that's when being a chef and cooking to me, and I'd love to hear you speak to this, is a lot like being an artist, like a musician, I think. Where they come in and they have an instrument, say it's a piano, there's only so many notes, but it's the combination of those notes and the rhythms and how they play them and all of those things that make it a unique piece. And I think cooking's much the same. There's only so many base techniques, but then you take different ingredients and you treat them in different ways and you try different things, and it gives you a finished product that's very similar to like a composed original piece of music.
For sure. Well, then that goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. I think with like, there's only so many very new and original, unique ideas you can do. So how can you take the notes like you're talking of and put them together in a way that makes sense to you? And you only figure that out by playing around with them and banging a few keys and getting those keys wrong, and then after a while you bang them a few times the right way, and now you understand, okay, this is what I want it to sound like.
Do you have a story from early in your career when you were cooking where something just like was totally messed up and you had to learn a hard lesson from it?
Um, I mean, multiple times. I can tell you, probably the first time that and a lot of people reach out to me saying, "Oh, well, chef, like I got the chance to try this special out, and I totally screwed it up." And really, the only way to learn is through failure, through figuring out the better way to do it next time. But the first restaurant I kind of helped turn around, I was it went from a very basic kind of drop it in the fryer type menu to, all right, like, let's try and do this from scratch. I wanted to empower the people that work there, and they actually ended up working out really well. But trying to do it all the very first day was a little bit too much. So I found that we did like a friends and family night when we kind of relaunched the menu, and should have probably done like a small version of it. Ended up getting our asses kicked, and it was the longest night of my life. I'm there yelling with the owner of the restaurant in the kitchen, but we ended up making it work. And on the other side of that was something that was really special to watch. All the staff was excited to go into work again. They were excited to tell their friends and family they worked there, and that only happens, I think, through trying new things and stepping out and giving things a shot.
I have yet to recreate that feeling. Well, maybe one or two other times I can think of in my life of being deep in the weeds in the middle of a dinner service. There's something about that
Oh
feeling.
yeah. Well, and there's nothing. I mean, have you experienced it outside of cooking?
Not outside of cooking, no.
Yeah.
Not the same feeling. I mean,
No.
I've been overwhelmed before, I've been stressed before, but there's something special and unique about that feeling of being deep in the weeds in the middle of a dinner rush.
And
There's
like,
nothing like it.
and part of you knows that you'll at some point get out, but another part of you feels like you never will.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like everything just kinda collapses around you, but then, like, we have this training, right? And I call it controlled chaos because to the outside person, if
Definitely.
you're in the middle of a kitchen, it looks chaos, but to the people who are in it, it's like a choreographed dance. But
Hmm.
when you're in the middle of it, like, I don't know about you, but chefs have this innate ability that well, I think it's been trained over time to kinda shut everything off and just focus on that thing in front of them.
Right.
And that's what you have to do. You have to shut everything off and just one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time until eventually you climb out of that hole.
There's for sure, and that's one of the things I like. You asked, learn that had to learn the hard way. I definitely learned the hard way because I had a cook who uh I was more technically sound, but he was a better line cook. He could get food out fast, and I would just try and the tickets are rolling in and I'm freaking out. I'm going all over the place, and he'd grab me and he'd say, "Chris," and he'd say, "Chris, all you can do is what you can do when you can do it." And it would always just remind me, like, one ticket at a time, one dish at a time, one ticket at a time. And after a while, you kind of power through. But yeah, it's I think controlled chaos is probably the best way to put it for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I take lessons from that as I'm sure you do too, where like in life things can get crazy and like your training will just kick in. And
Hmm.
you just go to that place where it's like one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time until I get out of this. And that's happened to me before in real life. Like I've never had that same feeling of being in the weeds on a dinner rush, but I've gone back to that skill set innately of one thing at a time. Let's just focus until we get out of this.
For sure. Speaking of getting out of this, how do you see? So we're here, like, hopefully, kind of getting closer to the end of this COVID-19 lock situation. How do you see the restaurant industry getting out of it? I mean, do you see things working out okay in the end, or?
I think that it'll definitely come back because the restaurant industry is something that you can't kill. It's too much. It's too big of a piece of who we are as people. So it won't go away. There will be casualties though, And that's the sad part. I even saw today, I was flipping through Instagram, and Momofuku, Dave Chang's place, there's 2 locations that shut down today
Oh,
that they
really?
announced. Yeah, 2 different, the one in DC and Nishi, and the one in DC, I believe, just
For
shut
good?
down for
Or
good. Yep. So they moved some of the staff to other locations, and some of them they dipped into a different fund to be able to pay out and make sure they still get benefits. But yeah, there's restaurants like that with a name like Dave Chang are closing, like, and it's not his fault. And I mean, I know not all restaurants are equal, even in the same restaurant empire, but I mean, there's going to be a lot of casualties, and that's the unfortunate part. And it's not just the restaurants themselves; it's also the food purveyors, because when you think about it, there are restaurants that when this hit, they owed money to the purveyors that they're not going to be able to pay back. And so that the purveyor has to take the hit. So I see like these big companies that kind of run the show. There's like 4 or 5 big food purveyors really absorbing some of these smaller ones, which is unfortunate because, those smaller ones, they get unique things and ingredients that the bigger ones don't get. So that's going to be unfortunate. But the other thing to consider is, when restaurants shut down, and I think we talked about this before, it's not just a matter of going in, unlocking the doors, turning on the lights in the stove and cooking again. I mean, all of your inventory is gone. Now you have to rebuy everything and start everything just like a startup, even if you've been there for 30 years. And that isn't an inexpensive venture.
For sure.
There's going to be a lot of casualties, but hopefully it turns around fast.
Well, for anyone that's watching or listening that doesn't understand what Mario just said before, about a minute or two ago, with the big conglomerates taking a brunt of the hit. So most restaurants, you have 30, 60, 90-day terms where you buy it and then 60 days from now, I have to write you a check for it. Well, if I close down, that means I haven't paid you for a substantial amount of product that I've already gone through that you'll probably never get.
Yep. And so you have these little purveyors that aren't getting paid for services and product that they provided, and there's nothing they can really do about it. So everyone loses, and then the big companies will swarm in and absorb them. And now we're going to go to a more system where major companies control everything for a while. So I think, I really hope that the casualties are less than we think they are, and I really hope that people, when this breaks, I hope, and here's going to be the differentiating factor, I think. When this breaks, how fast and how open are people going to be to eating out again? And I think that's going to be the biggest thing, because if people are open to eating out, if people go back quickly, then I think it'll turn around faster. But if people are still nervous and scared and staying at home, then it's going to hurt a lot more businesses. I think the other thing to keep in mind too is at this time, now more so than ever, I'm not a huge advocate for eating out regularly because I like to cook at home and promote cooking. But at this time, I mean, I make sure to order out at least once a week just because I want to help support these local restaurants that are only doing takeout. So that's another thing, order out once a week and it'll alleviate you having to cook one day, and it'll help support a local restaurant. If you don't want to eat the food or whatever, order out for someone else if you have the means to do so, just to help support the industry and keep it going, because it is a much needed industry, and those are people's livelihoods as well.
Yeah, and if companies like Dave Chang's Momofuku, which is, he's one of the bigger brands in our industry, if they're having trouble reopening, then the average mom and pop, who knows what kind of struggle they're dealing with.
So hey, Chris, thank you so much for being here and cooking, making that tuna and the salad, all that stuff. That was so much fun. I love what you're doing. Now you've got me hungry for tuna. I'm probably going to have to get tuna one day this week and do what you did, because it was just so much fun. And you were the first person to do this with me. So again, I want to thank you sincerely for that, because we're still working out the kinks. We're figuring this out, and I had a blast, and I want to keep doing this, and we'll have to have you on again in the future as well. Tell people where they can find you and where they can connect with you after watching this.
Yeah, so my Facebook is Chef Chris Hill. My website is chrishillonline.com. They'll do a chat with you about food or leadership or the restaurant industry, whatever it might be. So Mario, thank you for having me again, man. It's been fun. Look forward to maybe we can meet up in Camden Yards for a baseball game one day soon.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Camden, or if you get to Pittsburgh, PNC. I mean, I love Camden. Don't get
How
me
far are
wrong.
you from Baltimore?
About a 3-hour drive.
Gosh, yeah, I'm about a 4-hour drive.
Okay. Yeah, but PNC, man, I'll tell you what, I'm biased, don't get me wrong, but I really do believe from being to quite a few ballparks, PNC Park is just. Have you been to PNC Park by chance?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's a treat. I mean, it's one of the nicest ballparks I've ever been to.
Well, I guess we'll have to see how the baseball schedule plays out, but I imagine the Braves will be up there at some point this season.
Oh yeah. Yep, we'll see the Braves at some point, I'm sure. And hopefully that starts up again soon because I know we're both missing that.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
thanks again for being here. ChrisHillOnline.com is where people can go again. I want to mention that to find you. And I want to remind everyone, if you're listening to this on the podcast, please go rate and review our podcast if you liked what you heard. If you want to see what Chef Chris made, see his tuna, how he did it, you can go to connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can go to YouTube and the video is there. We do live stream these. So follow me there so that you can see our next cooking and conversation segment. And it's been a lot of fun, Chris. Thanks so much. We'll do it again soon for sure.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.